This was an unbelievable story that ran today in the Channel 9 newspapers. Have a look at this. Hotter temperatures and extreme weather linked to mental distress and suicide. That's bullshit. You know it and I know it, but who cares, right? This will make them do more. That's a disgraceful bit of work that was running around today, but of course went uncontested. And by the way, of course, remember, in all of the climate dealing that's going to take place, China's not even going to Glasgow. We have the debate about whether our Prime Minister should or shouldn't go. They're going to sign, right? They're going to say, yes, OK, cool, 10, 30 years from now, this is what we kind of hope to do, fingers crossed, right? They'll do it with taxes, we'll do it with technology, everyone else moves on. It's not the big election issue. China can do whatever the hell it wants till 2030. Remember, are not held to any sort of climate accountability for 9 more years. They can double, triple, quadruple, 10 times, 50 times more crap that they put into the air than they currently do. Because they're a developing nation, you see. A developing nation that, of course, is hosting the next Winter Olympic Games, hosted a Summer Olympic Games, has an international space station, and as we learnt today, this developing country, nuclear-capable hypersonic missiles. But it's a developing country, right? Senator Matt Canavan is in that Nationals room right now where they're doing all the negotiation. The wonderful Pauline Hanson is joining us, as well as Joel Fitzgibbon, all right? Pauline, this is the thing that normal people can't get their head around, right? So they understand the never, never. They understand the sort of tick and flick. They understand the dinner party set, right? But China is completely off the hook for 9 years because they are not a developing country. They've got a lot of poor people because they deliberately do so to qualify themselves. But sorry, developing countries can't send anything into space.
You're right, Paul, and we all know it. But over the period of time, they've actually bought their way and they've bought into these organisations. Look what the World Health Organisation did about the coronavirus. Absolutely nothing. They're on boards and bodies that they've bought themselves that places onto it. They've corrupted, as far as I'm saying, they've corrupted people along the way. And for a developing country, the Belt and Roads, they've got $4 trillion worth of property in Belt and Road around the world. $4 trillion. The human rights record, you know, everyone's terrified of China, of actually going against them and saying anything about them. And because China actually buys a lot of product from and resources from different countries around the world, and everyone's terrified of actually offending China. And the fact is that it'll go past 2030. You know, they didn't sign up to the Kyoto agreements. They're not going to go to COP26. They're going to do whatever they want to do. And we are stupid, and our Prime Minister is an absolute fool to sign us up to this, whereas I've been pushing for industries and manufacturing. We could actually set up our country to give people guarantee of supplying them electricity if we encourage them to invest here in Australia, and we can provide the power here. We don't get rid of our base load power, coal-fired power stations. We can't run the country on renewables, and that's been proven what's happening in Europe and in Britain, and we're fools. And Morrison's headed down this path, but I'll be on the rampage, and I'll tell you what, if One Nation gets the balanced power in that Senate, there's going to be a lot that'll be said about it, and I'm going to put pressure on the National Party to actually live up to this. They can't deliver for rural and regional areas and the farming sector if we head down this path for this 2050 net zero.
Let's talk about what's happening inside that party room, and I'm sure, Matt, there's a version you'll say for inside versus outside. What is your expectation? What is the best case scenario for Matt Canavan out of the next couple of days?
Well, I still think we should not be signing up to net zero, Paul. That's the best case outcome I'm arguing for, but obviously I'm only one of 21 in the Nationals party room and over 100 in the joint party room, so I don't get that complete say. Now, in terms of what Pauline just said, I respect her opinions on net zero. I pretty much have exactly the same view as what she said, but the problem with her argument politically is that Pauline said herself that if she was elected, what she's going to do is get down here and talk a lot in the Senate. That's not going to do much. The reality here is the government's position on net zero emissions, the government's policy on what we do at climate conferences is not going to be set by the Parliament or the Senate. It will be set by the nation's government. And I have a voice in the government party room, but Pauline does not. And this is the problem when people leave the government party room, and Pauline is not in that camp. I'm not putting her in that camp. But others I could really do with the Corey Bernardi in this room right now. I could really do with the Craig Kelly to back me up. But they're not going to be there tomorrow. So I'll do my best, mate. I don't think this is the right path for our country. I agree with what Pauline said. We need to be bringing manufacturing back to Australia right now. That the issue we've got in front of us with the defence security situation is to rebuild our manufacturing industry. And net zero does not just do nothing to help us do that. It actually harms us doing that because it makes us put a tax on things that create emissions, and manufacturing definitely creates emissions. We should be doing more of that and putting a pause button on these aggressive carbon emission reductions right now until we can defend ourselves.
Joel, can I ask you about...
Well, I just want to make a statement.
Of course, Pauline.
Can I just make a comment about that?
Of course.
Thank you very much. Matt's right, and I'm pleased that Matt's standing up about it. But the fact is, he says he's part of the government. Well, then you should actually be standing your ground with this and being determined about it. Now, you say I'm not part of the government. Well, isn't it quite funny, Matt, that I've actually got 2 of the controlling votes in the Senate to actually get your legislation passed most of the time. So I have a big say in what happens gets passed in Parliament. I may not be part of your government, but you actually led to the fact that I don't have a say in government. Yes, I do. And I have a big say in getting your legislation passed in Parliament most of the time because you can't get the opposition or the Greens to support you. So I've got more of a say there than a lot of other people on that floor of Parliament. So, yes, I do. So if we can actually get the balance of power, it has a lot to do with it, Matt, because you stand your ground on what you truly believe in. You don't roll over. It's like I saw the cane growers years ago. Barnaby Joyce said to him, listen, mate, I've actually got my hands tied. And they said, oh, Barnaby said he can't do anything. And I said, he's the Prime Minister, he's a resource minister. If he's telling you he's got his hands tied, well, what is hope for the rest of us? So I don't cop this. You've got to stand up and fight on principle. And if you feel that strongly about it, Matt, then walk away from the party, walk away from it.
That's what you shouldn't do.
And then stand with people who are going to.
That's exactly what you shouldn't do. Now, I am going to fight Pauline. I'm not backing down. I've said that. I'm not for sale. No amount of money or billions is going to change my view.
Half the time. You talk most of the bloody time, and your action's on the floor of Parliament. So I've seen it too much of the time.
Okay.
Your Joel is getting the easiest.
All talk, no action.
Hang on. I've got to respond to that. I stood my ground on Adani, Pauline. We got that up. I stood my ground on the Collinsville Power Station. We got the funding for that. And I'm going to stand my ground on this. I may not win. I don't know. I'm going to do my best. But the worst thing I could do is then leave the party room.
Well, I hope you do.
Because that just leaves the place to the lefties. That's if all of the good people leave, the government party room will be left with a bunch of bedwetting lefties. And that's what we don't want. So you've got to stay here and fight. Yes, it's hard, and sometimes you lose. But you've got to stay and fight. Now, as I said, Pauline, you're not in that camp. You set your own party up. You got elected on that platform. Good luck to you. But I have had a number of LNP colleagues who have just left when they don't get their way. And I really think that's bad for the government, bad for the country. We've got to keep solid people in the parties of government.
I think they're all watching tonight because they're texting me. So, shout out to everyone here.
Talking about crossing the floor. You can always cross the floor, Matt.
I will cross the floor on this. I will. I'll do that. That's a commitment. I will cross the floor on this. I've crossed the floor on it before.
Good.
I'll do that again. But again, that's not going to... there's no legislation here that's going to set our target at Glasgow. That doesn't happen. So you and I in the Senate don't get that vote on this issue.
So, Joel, I want to ask you about this.